Hey y'all, it's Jessica from Sloppy Swatches. Today I have a look at the Dress Me Up 90s Grunge collection that's available right now from Savannah Lacquer. I'll link her storefront and social media down below. This collection was sent to me for review and consists of 6 beautiful shimmery shades that represent the 90s grunge era. So first up is Slip Dress, and this is described as a dusty pink with a blue, purple, red, orange, shifty shimmer, and scattered hollow. I got a lot of the blue shimmer here on that pink base as well as that hollow. Really beautiful. It looks on the nail just like it does here in the bottle. I'll go ahead and show you a quick look at that brush shot. You can see that multi-chrome flaky is kind of on the more shimmery or flaky side, and I love that. So here's a look at the first coat. This one did start out fairly sheer, so one coat just makes for a nice blush of color. If you're someone who doesn't mind visible nail line, this is a very sweet and demure look as well. I am going to go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with a second coat. So here's a look at that second coat. I am working in thicker coats with this one because it did tend to be a little bit thinner. 2 coats is really close to being full coverage. I can still see just a shadow or a hint of a nail line though, so I'm going to go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with a third coat. Here's a look at that third coat. Again, I am working in a little bit of a thicker third coat. I just had to give it a little extra time to dry. These do dry down nice and glossy, which really impressed me. So here's a look at that completed mani. Had 3 coats before, glossy top coat underneath artificial lighting. Here's a view from another angle in direct sunlight with a glossy top coat. So here you still do get a ton of that shimmer as well as all of that hollow. I think that this would be a really cool finish with a matte top coat as well. So here is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. Next up is Flannel Shirt, and this is described as a taupe with a red shimmer and scattered hollow, and this is my #1 top pick of the collection. The red shimmer is just insane on this taupe base, plus you get a strong holographic linear effect as well. So here's a quick look at that brush shot, and I'll show you how Flannel Shirt swatched on my natural nail. So here's a look at that first easy coat. This one started out fairly sheer as well. I was a little bit worried about it building up, but it really builds up on itself so well. One coat went on nice and evenly. I didn't have to worry too much about brush stroking or capping the tip with that first coat or anything. So here's a look at my second coat. I did go in a little bit thicker here, but it did bring this one to full coverage. 2 easy coats, no issues or problems. It also does dry down nice and glossy, but this is another one that I think would look awesome with a matte top coat. So here's a look at that completed mani at 2 coats before a glossy top coat underneath my artificial lighting. Here's a view from another angle in direct sunlight with a glossy top coat. So super pretty, even in the sunlight. It's just as pretty indoors as well. And this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is Combat Boots, and this is described as a dark gray with silver shimmer and scattered hollow. So in the shade, this is going to look more like a very deep or dark graphite, but as soon as you get in direct sunlight, all of that hollow is going to pop right through. This is another absolute stunner. I'll go ahead and show you a quick look at that brush shot, and I'll show you how Combat Boots swatched on my natural nail. So here's a look at that first easy coat. This one is a little bit more pigmented. Again, it does start out maybe a little bit sheer, depending on your application preference. If you prefer going in for thinner coats, I think that this one would still be one that covers completely in just 2. So there's a look at that first coat. I'll let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with a second coat. I am working in kind of semi-thick coats here, but it does pull this one completely opaque. Really easy to use, very user-friendly. I didn't have any pooling or staining or anything like that, and it also does dry down to a beautiful glossy finish. So here's a look at that completed mani at 2 coats before a glossy top coat under artificial lighting. Then here's a view from another angle in direct sunlight with that glossy top coat. So you can see how all of that hollow reflects off this deep gray base. This is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So next up is Birkenstocks, and this is another favorite of mine. This is described as a brown with gold, green, and blue shifty shimmer as well as scattered hollow. So this is another one of those kind of micro flaky finishes. Very strong gold shimmer here and a very strong linear holographic effect. I'll go ahead and show you a quick look at that brush shot, and then I'll show you how Birkenstocks swatched on my natural nail. So here's a look at my first easy coat of this collection. I do feel like this is one of the more sheer polishes. If you wanted to sponge this one on, I think that would be totally appropriate. It's going to help you reach full opacity quicker. But I'll go ahead and let that dry and then show you how it built up for me with a second coat. Again, I am working with thicker coats here, and second coat really amps up that opacity and adds a ton of those flakes and a ton of that hollow. So I am going to go ahead and go in for a third and final coat, and I really feel like this one is worth it. It makes the finish beautiful and brings it to full opacity. I also did use this as a topper over black, and it worked just as well. Super stunning. So here's a look at that completed mani at 3 coats before a glossy top coat underneath artificial lighting. Here's a view from another angle in direct sunlight with a glossy top coat, and this polish is going to take on a completely different vibe in the shade versus in direct sunlight. This is my final swatch photo at an angle in that sunlight. So next up is frayed jeans, and this is described as a teal with a hint of golden shimmer and scattered hollow. I would say that shimmer is more than a hint, very strong, just as strong on the nail as it is here. Super beautiful, and that's what made me fall in love with this polish. So I'll show you a quick look at that brush shot, and then I'll show you how frayed jeans swatched on my natural nail. So here's a quick look at that first easy coat. This one almost feels like acrylic. It has almost that squishy type vibe, but it did go on nice and smooth, really easy. Just a little bit sheer here, so I'll go ahead and build up this first coat, let it dry, and show you how it built up for me with a second coat. So here's a look at that second coat. Again, I am working in thicker coats, and this polish is really close to being completely opaque in 2 coats. I really feel like this is full coverage. I had maybe a shadow of a nail line. I am going to go ahead and show you how it built up for me with a third coat because that's what I showed in my swatches, but I was really happy with the finish at 2. I really don't think that it changed it that much, but depending on your application, you may prefer 3 as well. So 3 coats for sure brings this one completely opaque. Here's a look at that completed mani at 3 coats before a glossy top coat underneath my artificial lighting. Here's a view from another angle in direct sunlight with a glossy top coat. So again, all of that hollow pops right through. This is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight. So lastly, today I have tights under my shorts, and this is described as a purple with a blue shimmer and a scattered hollow. So if you love purple or blurple polishes, this one is going to be perfect for you. It does also have a nice, strong linear holographic effect. I'll go ahead and show you a look at that brush shot, and then I'll show you how tights under my shorts swatched on my natural nail. So here's a look at that first coat. No surprise here, it does start out maybe a little bit sheer, but it did go on nice and smooth, really easy. I did have a tiny amount of pooling here in my cuticles. I think that was totally my application though, because I do tend to go in for thicker coats. I just cleaned it right up with acetone and a cleanup brush, no issues at all. So here's a look at that second coat. This is another polish that's going to be pretty much full coverage in 2. I did have a shadow of a hint of a nail line, so if you don't prefer that, you could always go in for a third coat. But here's a look at that completed mani at just 2 before a glossy top coat underneath my artificial lighting. Here's a view from another angle in direct sunlight with a glossy top coat, so super beautiful finish, very vibrant and bright. I did get a ton of that shimmer as well as a ton of that hollow under all different lighting sources. So this is my final swatch photo at an angle in that direct sunlight, and that does wrap up my swatch and review of the Dress Me Up 90s Grunge collection. Again, these are available right now. I'll link Savannah Lacquer's storefront and social media down below. If you'd like to see more photos, I do have those available on my blog at sloppyswatches.com, or you can also follow me on Instagram at sloppyswatches. So thanks so much for watching, guys. See you next time.